Now, there are a couple other intelligent theories that we're going to briefly talk about. I don't super care that you memorize and distinguish all of them, but let's cover what they are so that you know that there are a variety of ways of testing this. So the fact that you could separate intelligence into things like skills versus general intelligence led to this development of a number of other theories. So one of those is Sternberg's triarchic theory. Again, if you don't know this, I don't even know how to say it. And this person divided intelligence into 3 different categories. So analytical intelligence are those things like we kind of tested on IQ, the ability to identify, define, and solve problems. They included a creative intelligence component. So this is being able to solve novel situations, kind of think creatively to figure out a solution to something. And then lastly, practical intelligence. So being able to actually apply those solutions to everyday life and not just in a classroom. So when people talk about having like book smarts, but not street smarts, that's kind of what this is distinguishing. So this theory kind of proposes that there's these 3 different abilities that contribute to success, and you can tend to be kind of more gifted in one of these areas over the others. But in addition to that theory, someone was like, why stop at 3? Like, let's do all of the factors. So this is a theory of intelligence that's called Gardner's multiple intelligences. And this person was like, hey, there are so many domains that you can be intelligent in. So I'm going to classify 8 of them right here. So for instance, you might be really good at words and English and linguistic things. You might be word smart. You might be really good at math, logic smart. Okay, so we've covered the 2 things that other IQ tests tend to do. You might be really good at nature and understand things in your environment. You might be nature smart. You might be really good at pictures and being able to figure out some, spatial information. You might be really good at understanding your underlying body and anatomy. You might be really good at music. You might be good at interacting with other people or interacting with yourself. So these are an example, and as you may kind of think of from here is that there's really no reason there has to only be 8. So once you go down the slippery slope of intelligence and different factors, you can have an intelligence for kind of anything if you want to. So there's no good way. The intelligence is such a broad and vague term. So yeah, intelligence. But there's 2 other things that Gardner's multiple intelligences kind of gave to us. So Gardner was observing different people, ordinary people, people with brain damage, etc. And he was comparing their abilities between these 2 different groups. So he came up with these 2 kind of descriptions, and maybe you've heard of these words before. So he called someone a prodigy if they had normal intelligence, but were really good at something. So for instance, let's consider someone who's music smart. They have an extraordinary musical ability. They're otherwise pretty normal, but they're a prodigy for music. The kind of opposite of that, though, is the savant. So a savant is someone who has lower intelligence, but is really good at something. So yeah, these are 2 different extra descriptors that we could use to define people's intelligence levels. But Gardner never mentioned emotional intelligence in one of his 8 areas. So these 2 people, Mayer and Salovey, were like, hey, let's add that. So they developed a theory in the late 90s, early 2000s that involved emotional and social intelligence. So emotional intelligence is things like being able to reason about emotions and using emotions. Things like being able to identify body language, facial expressions, tone of voice, etc. Being highly emotionally intelligent tends to lead to more friends, better romantic relationships, because you're able to better, pick up different emotions and things. People who are higher in emotional intelligence tend to also be kind of happier overall because they're able to identify and use emotional states to relate to others and manage their own feelings. There's also social intelligence, which is kind of similar to some of Gardner's theories, but it's the ability to interpret and navigate complicated social interactions. And it's very correlated with emotional intelligence, as you could probably tell. Um, but yeah, kind of maybe a takeaway here is that you can have emotional and social intelligence without having necessarily strong cognitive intelligence. You might see these in things like cases of Down syndrome, who are very highly emotionally and socially intelligent, but maybe lack some of the verbal or math skills that we require, expect of different IQ tests. On the other hand, you might be the opposite. You might be really good at cognitive things, but have emotional and social deficits, for instance, cases like autism spectrum disorder. So this suggests that emotional and social intelligence are pretty separable from cognitive abilities. They're looking at different constructs, but they're still considered different types of intelligences.